If I go back to Jamaica, all different nationalities come and bite out and they can't get in.
Many of you never really take on board the challenge I'm going to get to of what it was.
Uncle British.
When did you arrive here, sir?
1956, 24 years of age.
1956. When did you arrive here? Same year, you arrived the same year. 1956. One of the first generation of black Britons to arrive in Britain. Yet, imagine, when they came here, many of them said, oh, we were expecting a mother country. They thought because in Jamaica, in the Caribbean, in Africa, the only white people they came in contact with was the white middle class, upper middle class, and the ruling elite. They couldn't perceive. My mother and parents always tell me stories of the shock that they felt when they saw white people sweeping the streets. White people who couldn't speak English. You're right, mate, how you doing? Oh, good, right, fucking hell.
I'm begging you as well.
Stunned.
I'm begging you as well.
They didn't believe that this happened. They could not fathom that white people were normal because they had the idea that whites were godlike.
Yes.
Whites were divine, much more intelligent, superior. These were the notions. When they came here under invite because post the Second World War, the industries were damaged. There weren't enough people, so many British soldiers had died. Your industries couldn't function, so blacks like this came to work in your factories, work in your transport, They said, come to the mother country. They were invited. Many of them had their passages paid to come here.
Not me though.
They were British, but fused themselves into the identity culture of landscape of Britain. The sad reality that many of you don't realize is, many of these people, when they came to Britain, they never came in with the intention to stay behind for so many years. It's been over 50 years. They never planned to do that. Many of them came to come, work, earn some money, and go back. Many of them. They end up caught in the system, working, buying a house, living here. And the reality is, when many of them go back to the Caribbean or go back to Jamaica, they think they're going back home, and they think, this is my country, my land. But then everyone around them says, you're not Jamaican, you're Englishman. They call them English. Foreigner.
Yeah, that's a run back.
So these are homeless people, they call them foreigners.
Yes.
So here you have a generation of people who are not made to feel welcome here, and they're not made to feel welcome when they go back home. Identity clash. But I won't say not made to feel welcome here, because Britain has bent over backwards to accommodate immigrants in this country. And that's one of the reasons why I say it is a great country. Great in the essence that when they listen to the way, listen to the way he speaks. He still speaks with his Jamaican accent.
Of course.
He still speaks with his Jamaican accent. My father has been in this country since 1960. When my friends used to come home from school and bring them home, they couldn't understand a word he was saying. He still spoke in a deep Jamaican patois accent, the broken English. When you came from Africa, Nigeria, or wherever you came from, you still kept and retained that strong accent. Yes, I am from Nigeria. Even though you've been in the country for 40 years. When you arrive from India, Pakistan, hello, how are you over there? Some of them still don't speak English. You go to Southall, you feel you're in Little India. You go to Seven Sisters, you think you're in Little Ghana. You go to Brixton, you think you're in Jamaica. That's how people were able to keep their identity, because Britain is not conformist in its identity. Of course it is, it's very nationalistic, but and I think it was by accident, Britain didn't want to absolve those cultures as part of the British identity. And that's one of the challenges as to why Britain doesn't want to become a part of Europe now. Real challenge about identity. But by default, you allowed people to keep their identity. America is the most conformist nation on earth. When you arrive in America, you are forced to lose your identity. You are forced to become American. I have cousins. As I said, my father's been here from 1960 and still speaks English with a broken accent. You couldn't understand a fucking word he's saying. But I have family members who moved from Jamaica to America in the 90s. They arrived in America saying, yeah man, I want a blood clot, pass me a split for a rude boy. And within 6 months they're saying, hey there buddy, how you doing? Let's go to the baseball game. They became American because in America they do not appreciate or respect anyone outside of that dominant American narrative is outside. So these are the virtues of Britain and its identity. Yet, with what Britain has accomplished in terms of multiculturalism and identity, we still have politicians attacking multiculturalism. We have people like David Cameron, an opportunist, saying multiculturalism hasn't worked. Nonsense! Multiculturalism has worked. Look at us. We can stand here in Speaker's Corner. I've been a speaker in Speaker's Corner for 27 years. And I can count on one hand, all right, maybe that's a bit of exaggeration, two hands maybe, the amount of fights or disturbances that I've seen over the last 27 years. We have people here who are Jewish, Muslim, Christian, black, white, extremist, fundamentalist, other. But look around you and look at the beauty that even if we don't agree with each other, we can listen and hear points of view. My friend, where are you from? Algeria. Where are you from? Morocco. Where are you from, sir? South Africa. Where are you from, sir? Philippines. Where are you from, sir? Somalia. Where are you from, sir? Pakistan. Where are you from, sir? Bangladesh. Where are you from, sir? Nigeria. Where are you from, sir? Angola. Where are you from, sir? Cameroon. Where are you from, sir?
Turkey.
Sorry?
Turkey.
Turkey. Where are you from? Jamaica. Where are you from, sir?
Ethiopia.
So Ethiopia. Where are you from, madam? New Zealand. Where are you from, sir? Wales. Oh, Wales. Nationalistic. No, nothing Barbara. But this is the reality. Look at the beauty of it. There's nothing to be ashamed of. What is there to hate about the plurality of humankind? What is there? Look at it. You know as human beings, whether you are Welsh or not, you've met good Welsh people and you've met bad Welsh people. Well, or maybe not. You've met Welsh people who are kind and you've met Welsh people who are bastards. This is human nature, it's got nothing to do with identity. You've met Welsh people who are thieves, who are honest. The same with black, white, Jew, Muslim, Christian. We are human beings. Why do we fight and murder and maim and kill each other in the name of these petty differences of which our governments exploit, and our governments get us fighting each other on ground level so that they can steal the loot at the top? Look at the bankers. How many billions of dollars and pounds? How many billions of dollars have bankers stolen? How much? Have they faced justice? Are they in court? But in this time of austerity, they're telling you about, they'll put on the front page of the newspaper a woman who defrauded the state by £20 by claiming too much housing benefit, or by claiming a benefit that she wasn't deserved. They will penalize the poor people as opposed to those who steal billions. Vodafone dodged a tax bill of $3 billion in this country. Yet they're talking about austerity. The Queen had a platinum. Was it platinum or diamond? What was it? A diamond jubilee. At a cost of almost £5 billion. Are you hearing me? The Queen had a silver jubilee at a cost of £5 billion. Now I'm not saying that it cost $5 billion to put on the silver jubilee. What they did, and it was the first time they'd ever given a double bank holiday. You had Monday off and you had Tuesday off. You didn't have to go to work till Wednesday. And you can imagine the amount of lost revenues in terms of people who've taken time off work and the effect on the economy. $5 billion at a time of austerity. It really shows you how the rich have got their priorities wrong. In the Western societies, the hypocrisy is they will look to Africa and they'll say, oh, look at that African dictator. While his people are hungry, he lives in luxury. They did the same with Saddam, the same with Gaddafi. I remember I was in Libya during the war. And I remember a Western journalist arriving at Gaddafi's house, and the first thing they're doing is looking for his clothes, and they said, look at his bathroom. Look at how he lived. And they said, look, he had a whole fleet of Louis Vuitton, of Calvin Klein on one of his shirts. And they're looking at his wardrobe. The man was the head of state. He's got to meet people all the time. That's his wardrobe. Could you imagine a revolution in Britain and you go to Buckingham Palace and say, look at how the Queen lived. Look at it. Fucking hell. And then we have the same media who will look at black hip-hop artists and say, oh, look at them with their bling, diamond rings. The Queen is the queen of bling. There's no one more fucking blinged out than Elizabeth herself. She is the fucking don of dons when it comes to bling. However, you have a lighter, please. That does not excuse those black rappers and musicians. Look at all that we have been through as black people. All the suffering, pain, poverty, marginalization, disenfranchisement, all of that. And then, imagine, in the 70s we had artists, reggae artists, Bob Marley. In hip-hop, KRS-One, Public Enemy. People talking about the social issues, what it was like being black and poor, the oppression of living in the ghetto. This is what hip-hop was. Now look at hip-hop. In hip-hop now they're talking about nigga bitches, hoes. I fucked this bitch. I fucked her in the back. I killed this nigga. I shot the nigga 9 times. Kill the nigga. Nigga, 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 nigga. Kill the nigga. Nigga bitches, hoes. Niggas, bitches, hoes. And they get paid millions upon millions to do that. Millions upon millions. And then we have young people. No wonder the world's fucked when it comes to youth culture. You have young people talking about Snoop Dogg, Puff Daddy, Jay-Z. These are foot soldiers of capitalism. They are foot soldiers of capitalism. They are the ones selling the imperialist dream. They are part of that white supremacist agenda. They sell death, murder, destruction, recognizing that the majority of poor people will remain in that condition, whether you are black or white. They sell death, but look at the racial element to it, the racist element to it. We have commercial record companies putting out, and then have Jay-Z at a concert in Hyde Park as an icon. And in his music he talks about kill nigga this, shot a nigga, I was dealing drugs, roll up on some guy, I got some crystal on my lap, my mama. They have artists talking about how Lil Wayne, talking about how his teeth, his diamond teeth, cost him $150,000. You have what, Lil Kim, who cuts out $100 bills and sticks the fucking one on her nails. And then they have MTV Cribs promoting this decadent lifestyle. Look at my crib, look at the cars I got, look at the house I live in. Nigga, 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 bitches and hoes. And the white commercial and the black commercial record industry pushes this type of music out. Only because there are black people pushing the messages out to black communities. Do you believe not one commercial record company would ever promote a white artist, not even Eminem. Eminem might talk about his mother. My mother's a bitch. My mother this, I wish I did this to my mother. But they would never promote a white artist saying, I just did a drive-by on some honkies. I just shot this honky. I shot the honky 9 times. You white women, you're bitches and hoes. There is no way on earth that that type of music would be condoned, would be pushed out into the commercial record arena for people to dance and jive to in clubs. That is what I mean when we talk about white supremacy. And when I talk about white supremacy, I'm not talking about white people. I'm talking about a system of which even poor white people are victims of. So we have people like Barack Obama, a black man in the White House who black people are terrified to criticize. Terrified! And the white liberal left are just happy that there's a black man in the White House because it affirms their credentials. So Barack Obama has a bulletproof vest. Barack Obama is worse than Bush. Worse than George W. Bush. Barack Obama is an evil fucking devil.
Just another puppet.
Let me qualify that for you black people who are now in a state of shock.
Why is that, Mr. Speaker?
And you white people who are contemplating suicide. Barack Obama is a fraud. Barack Obama is a PR construct. He's a marketing gimmick. You heard me mention earlier about how the icons for peace and social justice are black or non-white, generally, as a general rule. The Gandhis, the Martin Luther Kings, the Nelson Mandelas in waiting. We speak about how the United Nations, every Secretary General, is non-white. From Boutros Ghali to Kofi Annan to Ban Ki-moon. Because if you had a white man as the head of as the Secretary General of the United Nations, when we see these imperialist actions taking place, when we see the colonialization and the imperialist actions in countries like Libya and across Africa and the Middle East, if there was a white Secretary General from Europe, people would say, look, it's racist. But all the institutions are white, from the World Bank, where every president of the World Bank is American or has been American, where every president of the IMF has been European. When we go to the ICC, the International Criminal Court in The Hague, they have only ever tried Africans. Only Africans have ever been put on trial. Now, some of you might be mistaken when you say Slobodan Milosevic. Milosevic was not put on trial at the ICC. He was put on trial at the Special Tribunal for Yugoslavia. It's a different court set up in The Hague, primarily to try the crimes of the Balkan region. That is a special court which is temporary. The ICC is a permanent court. Only Africans have ever been tried there. It's a disgrace, but we never blink an eye. We never question, we never challenge. So back to Barack Obama. In this atmosphere where we have architects, economic architects, manufacturing the books because the economy is a shambles, the Federal Reserve is a scam, money is based on nothing, they just run a printing press, printing money, they then artificially inflate economies, all of that illusion. Then you have the social engineers who are engineering what you think in advance, what kind of character will sell you. These aren't presidents or governments. These are salesmen and women representing corporate interests. So when they were deciding all of this, do you remember? Why did America need a black president? America needed a black president because America had lost so much credibility on the world stage. No one trusted in the word of America. Why? Because of George Bush, who was just the worst puppet they could have ever imagined. He couldn't even read his lines off a fucking auto cue. The man was so stupid. He just couldn't play the game right. He exposed everything with George Bush. The neocon agenda. Look at George Bush. Because of George Bush, we had Iraq. They told us about weapons of mass destruction, which was turned out to be a lie. People began to doubt their government and doubt international leaders and institutions, the UN, all these institutions. So we had Iraq. We had a war in Afghanistan, of which, let me ask now, the war in Afghanistan started in 2001. We are now in 2013, 12 years later. Are there any Americans here? Hands up if you're American. Any Americans? No. American. But let me ask this question to all of you international citizens of the world. Sir, why is the war in Afghanistan being fought? You're not sure. Madam, why is the war in Afghanistan being fought? Why is the war in Afghanistan being fought? Sorry? Power? Can you be a little more vague? Heroin, he says. That's why I don't ask you Arabs or Muslims. Heroin. Straight to it. No, sir. Taliban. The reality is, 12 years later, we still have not got a clue why Western troops are in Afghanistan. We really don't know what the real full agenda is. Now hold on. So with George Bush, we had Iraq, we had Afghanistan, we had Guantanamo Bay, one of the greatest stains on the conscience of all humanitarian thinking human beings. The greatest stain, where you kidnap people, hold them in limbo without trial, without being accused or charged with anything, for years. Many of them in solitary confinement. So we had Guantanamo Bay, we had Iraq, we had Afghanistan, and remember, we had Hurricane Katrina. Hurricane Katrina was the most damaging slight against America, because people outside America have this idea, the ideas of America is very reductive. They reduced America to Hollywood, Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Friends, Fraser, Sex in the City, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Rambo. Sorry? Brad Pitt, Darth Vader, Star Wars. We reduce it to all of these cliches of which we understand because we have this relationship with American culture. But we don't really understand what's going on in the landscape. When we had Hurricane Katrina, it took away houses, cars, homes, and it took away the facade that America is an equal society. Because who we saw left behind was majority black, poor people. We had, what's his name, Anderson from CNN. He said it looked like a refugee camp in Africa. We saw these images in America of black people on roofs, white people in their communities on the fringes with guns blocking black from escaping. Remember? They then, imagine we have a hurricane, people are hungry. They're going into shops to find food. They called it looting. Looting! Could you imagine? A national disaster whereby people are hungry and the black victims who were left behind are then further victimized by calling them looters. Looters! And do you remember, I think it was one of these left-wing newspapers which exposed the facade where there was a case of a black individual who was rolling through the water with stuff on his shoulder, and one of the Western papers had put looting, and then there was a picture of a white man, a white woman who had also been into a shop taking goods and saying survivors, trying to survive. And then the Independent put them both side by side, both pictures, and it shows you the perspective. So America was shamed. Jesse Jackson said it looked like the hull of a slave ship. That was Jesse Jackson's remarks. I remember seeing an American on a roof, and some media helicoptered in and landed, and they put a microphone in his face, and we saw the undereducation, the marginalization. We saw it all in the narrative. He said, they held the microphone in front of him, and they said, what happened? And he said, it gone, it gone. He couldn't even speak English too good. He was saying, it's gone. It gone! It gone! We saw the poverty laid bare. We saw the inequality in terms of policy, in terms of government. That was Katrina. So America was in shambles. George Bush, America could not, the neoconservative corporate agenda could not have continued under George Bush. So they needed something radical. Hold on, sir. They needed something radical to shake up voters, to bring back confidence. So all of a sudden, in the midst of Iraq, Afghanistan, Guantanamo Bay, Katrina, we had the elections coming up, and then they said it's going to be the first black president or the first female president. And you dumb Americans are like, ah! Everything's changed again. All they did was just, it's like a magician doing magic. Who was Barack Obama? Had any of you honestly heard of Barack Obama prior to the elections? What was his political pedigree? Where did he come from? He came from a marketing fucking PR company. Barack Obama. So it had to be the first black or the first woman. And that reignited confidence, that reignited attention and interest around the world about the elections. So it could have been the first black or the first female. They'd already proven that a black person, in terms of what a government can get away with, because remember, the war in Iraq was sold by Colin Powell, using that same narrative, because blacks are supposed to know better, have the history of slavery, they're supposed to know about suffering and side with the oppressed. That is the marketing icon of the blacks. So Colin Powell sold us the war as a marketing gimmick. So they saw that it could work if they up the stakes and have a black president, then get away with more. After Colin Powell, who was it? Condoleezza Rice, the most conservative and right-wing thing you could imagine. If they said to Condoleezza Rice, let's bring back slavery, she'd say, I thought you'd never ask. She was more conservative she was more right-wing and more extremist than white extremists. So they saw that Barack Obama could work. Barack Obama was born out of a corporate advertising boardroom. And how did they sell Barack Obama? They used part Martin Luther King and they used part John F. Kennedy, glued them together and gave you Barack Obama. Barack Barack Obama is a Frankenstein monster. That was the creation. And Barack Obama, when he was coming up through the ranks, Barack Obama through his campaigns was saying, change we can believe in. Change, change, change. Yes, we can. And people believed him. People believed that Barack Obama was going to bring about change, that he was going to bring about ethical accountability within government. People believed this. Barack Obama said, I am going to close Guantanamo Bay. As part of his electoral campaign pledge, Barack Obama didn't say within 1 year. He gave you a date when he was going to close it. A date you could put in your diaries. He said Guantanamo Bay would be closed by January 2010. That was Barack Obama. Barack Obama said he was going to withdraw the troops from Iraq. Barack Obama said he was going to sedate the war in Afghanistan. Barack Obama said he's going to do all in his power to find peace between Israel and Palestine. Now let's look at Barack Obama's agenda and his legacy. We are now in 2013. Guantanamo Bay is still open. 2 weeks ago, Barack Obama, that hypocrite, that Frankenstein monster, that PR construct, Barack Obama came out and said, Guantanamo Bay should be closed. This is an ethical stain on the conscience of America. That's Barack Obama, 2 weeks ago. Why would Barack Obama be calling for the closure of Guantanamo Bay now? Because there is a hunger strike in Guantanamo Bay. There are 166 prisoners in Guantanamo Bay. 100 of them are on hunger strike. They've been on hunger strike for almost 100 days. Over 100 days. It's only a matter of time before they start dying one by one. What is the American administration doing? Force feeding them. How are they force feeding them? Through their nose. Human rights organizations said this is tantamount to torture. They run a fucking tube through your nose, imagine, into your stomach to feed you. And that's what's sustaining these people alive. So Barack Obama realizes, being a PR construct himself, that he's facing a PR disaster. Imagine what would happen to Obama's legacy if people in Guantanamo Bay began dying. That's why they're force feeding them now. 100 days on hunger strike. Who remembers the IRA hunger strike of Bobby Sands? How long did he last? Was it 60 days, 61 days, 62 days? And the other 10 that then followed him. Bobby Sands was my hero. In fact, it was Bobby Sands who got me paying attention to politics. Because when Bobby Sands, an IRA hunger striker, was on hunger strike, I wanted to. He was 27 when he died. I thought, what? Imagine, it's a painful way to die. Hunger. If I skip a meal, I think, oh, fucking hell. Just one meal. But to skip a meal, forcing yourself to die as a result. I wondered to myself, what would make a human being do this? And I was a young kid at the time, I was about 11 years old. And I remember when on the media, they gave you the count. Day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, and each time they were monitoring his deterioration. The media have not given you the story of 100 hunger strikers on strike in Guantanamo Bay. They have not told you that. Because if they told you that, you would begin to connect to their suffering. You'd begin to ask questions why. You'd begin to protest again. You begin to make demands against your government. You begin to hate the American government for its unethical policies. How can the Americans claim to be humanitarians? Helping Libya, helping Syria, when they have a prison of which they incarcerate people without trial. If any other nation on earth was to do this, we would condemn them. But America has license to murder. Why? Because we are all participants in American culture. We all, in some way, watch American movies. We are all enthralled by Hollywood. Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Friends, Fraser, Sex in the City, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Jay-Z, Puff Daddy, Snoop Dogg. We are all enthralled by that illusion that they conjure up to keep you focused, to distort your attention. Hold on, my friend. I want to get to you. The media is a construct. Let me put this to you to show you how the media controls your minds and takes you wherever they want to take you. Do you remember we had the Hutton inquiry about the Iraq War? of which was a bogus inquiry. No one had confidence in it, so they had another inquiry, the Butler inquiry, of which no one had any confidence. It was discredited, and so they had another establishment inquiry. How the hell can you have an inquiry launched by the state to investigate the state? Now, the Hutton inquiry was to investigate the crimes of the Iraq War. Who was the head of the Hutton inquiry? It was Lord Hutton. Now we should ask questions. Lord Hutton. How did Lord Hutton get his peerage? He was given his peerage by whom? Tony Blair, the very man who is investigating. Then we have the Butler inquiry. Giving his peerage by whom? The said New Labour government. So after these two inquiries, people said we want more. So they said we're going to have the Chilcot inquiry, and we had all of these politicians who are part of the game selling you the same lie, whether they are left or right, Conservative, Liberal or Labour, selling you the same lie. They're saying that the Chilcot inquiry will be more robust. They will have more powers. What powers did the Chilcot inquiry have? They weren't even giving evidence under oath. That meant that anyone could walk into that inquiry. They did not imagine. If you have a fucking parking ticket, if you get a parking ticket that you don't pay and you're summoned to court, you have to take an oath. I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And if I lie, I'm committing a crime, perjury. Imagine, that's for a parking ticket. Here we have the butcher of Iraq, who murders hundreds of thousands of people, and he's called to an inquiry where he doesn't have to give an oath. So who cares, who knows what the veracity is of his evidence? But that's not my gripe. We were waiting, the Chilcot inquiry was like watching paint dry. Boring as hell. And now we're doing this one, and now that one. Fucking boring. Boring. I'd rather watch Black Blue Peter back to back for a week than watch 1 hour of the Chilcot inquiry. Boring as hell. So then we have the Chilcot inquiry. The main star witness was Tony Blair himself, the devil's right-hand man himself. The entire country was waiting for Tony Blair to give evidence. They were sitting on the edge of their seats, and then Tony Blair came. He gave his evidence, and then we're waiting for the newspapers, the Sunday papers, to analyze and to break down and to give us the nuts and bolts of what Tony Blair's evidence was. And then when we're expecting that, what does the media give us? They tell us that John Terry, a Chelsea footballer, has had an affair with someone, and it occupies the news for 3 weeks. For 3 weeks they tell you about John Terry when we're waiting for Tony Blair. That's how the media, and what they do is they build it up. So you think, cool, John Terry, I didn't even know who John Terry was, I don't watch football. But let me just test how important that piece of information was that week. Let me ask you, sir, do you remember the John Terry incident? You, sir, yes, you. Do you remember the John Terry incident? Do you remember the name of the woman he had the affair with? Do you, sir? Do you, madam? Do you, sir? Do you remember the name of the woman he had the affair with? No one knows. It meant we really didn't give a fuck. But at the time when they were giving us this story about John Terry having an affair, we felt that it was the most important news story. And you ran in that direction. Can't you see how the media takes you there and takes you there? They swoo you wherever. And I've worked within the media. I worked for BBC, as I said, in current affairs. Many of you might know the film Blood Diamonds. I made the original documentary Blood Diamonds, first one to travel with the rebels. And even then, I had to take the BBC to a tribunal because they lied. They distorted the story. They said, Ishmahil, go and tell a story about how the rebels are using slave labor to mine diamonds. To mine diamonds. You're from Angola. You should understand about diamonds. My friend, in any conflict, every nation will use the resources at its disposal when they're fighting a war to buy weapons. So there was absolutely nothing unusual about the Sierra Leoneans using diamonds. In fact, they were selling cocoa. But blood cocoa doesn't sound like blood diamonds, does it? And all the world was on blood diamonds, blood diamonds, blood diamonds. Why? When you're engaged in war, you use the resources to buy weapons. But they hooked you. Blood diamonds, Leonardo DiCaprio. Blood diamonds, blood diamonds, blood diamonds. I said to them, I will go because I was working in Sierra Leone at the time. I said I will go and get in that story as long as we can tell the broader narrative as to how the war started. Because the Western media, reductive in its ideas about Africa, reduced the conflict in Africa, in Sierra Leone to diamonds. They always patronize Africa. So the people in Africa, and oh yes, and this chap here used to work for the Times. A Times reporter, you've got your notepad, are you doing a story? He was never a really good reporter. I had to sometimes help him with his notes. And still help him. What are you writing? What story are you writing now? What story are you writing now?
Well, at the moment I'm doing a study of mental illness.
You're doing a study of mental illness.
I'm looking at the people who actually talk here. I'm looking at their mental problems.
Well, stay in the audience and see what you can glean.
I don't
help
have to.
everyone.
I just listen to you. Blood diamonds are a good story.
Of course.
Who's interested in wheat when they read about blood diamonds?
Sorry?
Who's interested in wheat and about cocoa? When they
Who's
read
interested
about
in wheat or cocoa? When it's blood diamonds, of course.
Yeah.
So the media use hooks to
make
bring the
people
public
read
in.
them.
No,
Of course
sir.
they do.
No, sir.
Who's
But the
the-
reality is, sir, okay.
right.
You understand about blood diamonds?
Yes.
You're a journalist.
Yes.
You work for the Times.
I used to run for the
Very, very well esteemed. Tell me, sir, why did the war in Sierra Leone start? Why did it happen?
I have no idea.
No idea. And this is an educated journalist who worked for the Times. Not a fucking clue. Not a fucking clue. My friend, you should be right. Get the fuck out of here. Brother, listen. Brother, I've known you for some time.
Yeah, we have.
When you come into this meeting, you had better have your PhD. Brother, you're in the wrong meeting. You start over there with the Christians where you do your undergrad. You then go to the Muslims where you do your postgrad. And then you come here. But if you haven't got the facts, you're in the wrong place.
Come here for a better class.
If you have no facts, you're in the wrong place, brother.
No.
And I'm on your side.
Who admits he's ignorant. You don't.
You don't know why you don't know why the war started, sir. Sir, that's exactly my point. When we just understand about blood diamonds without the broader narrative of why it took place, we have no context. Let me explain and elucidate what took place. What happened was, in the east of the country, in Kono, in Sierra Leone, you have two types of diamond mining. You should understand because you're from Angola. But then again, ordinary citizens in Angola, in these countries, have never seen diamonds. They don't see diamonds. They don't know nothing about fucking diamonds. But there are two forms of diamond mining. There's alluvial mining, which is surface mining. We can dig a hole, get some water, and pan for diamonds like you pan for gold in the old days. That's called alluvial mining. Not very profitable unless you find a stone of 3 carats or 4. And people do, and people get rich, and that's what everyone dreams about, finding the stone that will make them rich. That's what the ordinary citizens engage in, diamond in alluvial mining. To the point that when the rebels seized Kono, they've discovered diamonds in Sierra Leone since 1926. But Kono as a city had never been mined. But they mined all over, it's exploited. So when the rebels seized Kono, what were the people doing? They were digging up the streets, the high street, the shops, the houses, to go on because they'd never been, and to find diamonds. That was what was going on. So what happened in Sierra Leone was this. There's two forms of mining, alluvial mining and kimberlite mining. Kimberlite mining is where you dig deep into the ground, you go very deep, and you can pull out the big diamonds. That's what the big companies are interested in, the kimberlite mines. Now, because Sierra Leone is a poor country, when I was there during the war, the GDP for the country, entire country, was $10 million. They can't afford to buy the sophisticated big machinery to dig deep, so they go to companies in South Africa and all around the world to try and get the machines. But what was happening was, the government was going into Kono, digging up the big diamonds, and they were taking the diamonds and building up another part of the country. So the people of the East, tribalistic as you might call it, weren't receiving the benefits of the diamonds under their soil. There were no schools, no hospitals. All of these social services were deficient. That's why they took up arms. I sat down with Brigadier Maurice Colon of the RUF in Kono during the war. And he was explaining to me how the war started. He's now in jail. He's now in jail charged with crimes against humanity. He got a life sentence. But he told me about how it was him, Fodik Sanko, and 12 others who raided an army barracks. And when they first started, if anyone who knows the history of Sierra Leone will know that some people actually supported them. The RUF had a lot of support. So I'm saying it is important to give context to these stories. When I was at the BBC, they were saying that you have to simplify the story. The public don't want that background information. I was arguing that the public are intelligent enough to absorb that type of information. But around that time, 2001, we were getting into all of this reality TV. They were dumbing down all of the content and stuff like that. And so now we have X Factor, American Idol, Big Brother, I'm a Celebrity, get me the fuck out of here, and all these other bullshit programs. That's reality.
People love it. The real trouble is, you're saying people ought to be interested. We all know that they're not.
I'm not saying people ought to be interested, sir. I'm saying that we should give people all the information, that they can pick and choose what they want, but at least all the information is on the table. But that's all I'm saying.
There's no point saying.
That's all I'm saying.
All the information.
And if I was an editor at the Times, you would have been fired a long time ago. You'd have been fired a long time ago.
Well, I spent 12 years on
What sort of articles are you writing?
Well, this
a disgrace. A disgrace. Spell it.
Can I ask you something? When you mentioned before the war of Afghanistan,
When I mentioned the war, before the war of Afghanistan,
you said why the war started.
why the war started.
And what they show in the media that Osama bin Laden.
What they showed in the media is that Osama bin Laden
linked to 11 September. That's why they started the war in Afghanistan. And after that,
Are you off?
I've been off for years.
You're going to get your undergrads or your postgrads?
what is the real theory of 11 September? Theory
Sir, sorry?
the real truth about 11 September.
He says, what is my theory about September the 11th? I'm very careful when discussing September the 11th. Because as soon as you discuss September 11th, the power of the corporate media is such that as soon as you debate or contradict the evidence, you're called a conspiracist. And they use these thought-terminating cliches. You will have intelligent, no, they're not intelligent, far from it, but they're on television as pundits, debating a position. And as soon as anyone raises any doubt about September 11th, they bring in that thought-terminating cliche, which seals your coffin. Oh, you're a conspiracist. So, let me not enter down the avenues of conspiracist theories. Let's deal with facts that we all know and is out there in the public domain. First of all, Osama bin Laden was never indicted for September 11th. It's not on his charge sheet. He was never wanted for September 11th. That was not on Osama bin Laden's FBI charge sheet. So we have September 11th. Let me bring you into a space of speculation, reasoning and doubt. We have September 11th, the worst act of terrorism ever committed on American soil. Anyone disagree with that? Yep. The worst act of terrorism, you disagree? What? The American Indians. Oh, you're perfectly right. The American Indians. You're perfectly right. But in a contemporary sense, in living memory, you're right to correct me on that, because we should acknowledge. And in fact, when we say the American Indians, the Native Americans would be much more correct. So far from India, but it was racism that called them Indians in the first place, when they believed they were the Indus. So we have September 11th, the worst terrorist attack in living memory. 3,000 people lost their lives. Imagine the amount of planning that must have taken. The years of planning. And it's so sophisticated. It's sophisticated beyond the abilities of Al-Qaeda. You have people that have to learn to fly planes. They claim they learned to fly in Cessnas, and then from Cessnas moved on to commercial jets. But I'm not doubting that. That's not my argument. I put this to you. When we had September 11th, days after September 11th, we had what was known as the anthrax scares. Many of us had never heard about anthrax. Many of us had never heard about anthrax before. But days after September 11th, we heard anthrax, anthrax, anthrax. Anthrax, anthrax, anthrax. For 6 months across the world's media, all of them was anthrax, anthrax, anthrax. Now when they spoke about September 11th, within an hour of the attacks on the Twin Towers, they claimed that Osama bin Laden was responsible. Within an hour! Within hours of the attack. Now, let's put some facts together. When September 11th happened, they grounded all planes. All planes. No planes were allowed to leave.
Except Saudi Arabia.
Except one. The Bin Laden family. The Bin Laden family were in America at the time, in Texas, and that plane was the only plane allowed to leave America. So they looking for Osama bin Laden, but allow his family. And Osama bin Laden came from a family of billionaires, financiers, You would think the family might be involved. Where did Osama bin Laden get his money from originally? But bin Laden